Berlin has practically ceased to exist. It's impossible to gloat over this sort of thing, but the job had to be done.
Where is this? What's going on?
It's 1945, and the Second World War has just ended. The number of people who died is not known, but it's estimated to be as high as 50 million.
How did it happen? Who is to blame?
The causes of any major event are complicated.
Yeah, but someone must have started it.
September the 1st, 1939, German leader Adolf Hitler orders his troops to invade Poland. But you can't understand what caused a war by just witnessing the first shots.
How do you mean?
You'll need to dig deeper, to look back into history for longer-term causes, to really make sense of what happened.
All right.
The First World War. August 1914, Germany and Austria-Hungary go to war with Great Britain, Belgium, France and Russia. Over the next 4 years, men, money and munitions are poured into the mud-torn battlefronts.
My first hint of the horrors to come appeared as a small lump on the side of the duckboard. I glanced at it as I went past and saw to my horror that it was a human hand gripping to the side of the track. No trace of the owner, just a glimpse of a muddy wrist and a piece of sleeve sticking out of the mud. After that, there were bodies wherever I looked.
The First World War ended on November the 11th, 1918. Germany was defeated. 20 million soldiers and civilians lay dead, and in the battle zones, farms, roads, factories lay wrecked. This was to be the war to end all wars.
So why wasn't it?
Because when the victors arrived at the Palace of Versailles in 1919, although their aim was lasting peace, they found themselves in disagreement over the vital question of how Germany should be treated.
In what way?
The French President, Georges Clemenceau.
Germany is defeated, but what has Germany lost? It is France, not Germany, that lies in ruins. France in debt to America. We say Germany must pay. Germany must never be strong enough to fight again.
The British Prime Minister, David Lloyd George.
Of course, some of us want revenge and all debt settled in full, but we must also want a lasting peace. And for that, we need a just peace. A too-weak Germany cannot help us rebuild. She cannot stand alongside us as we face the new communist threat from Russia.
The American President, Woodrow Wilson.
This was a war fought far from American shores. So maybe some of us are thinking, let's just bring the boys home and put the screws on for the repayment of all U.S. loans. But I tell you, we have to get things changed. Find some way that all the nations of the world can join together. A League of Nations. And so let cooperation light our path into the future.
So what did they do about Germany?
Decision point 1919. The options. 1. Punish Germany severely for causing the war. She should pay all debts, give up land, and lose most of her army. 2. Restricted punishment, allowing Germany a smaller army, a few boundary changes, and smaller debt payments. 3. Help Germany join the democratic and peaceful world.
It's so difficult to decide. I can see that Britain and France need the money, but if they're too hard on the Germans, they won't get lasting peace.
Urgent decision needed.
1919, Europe in chaos. The soldiers come home from the front expecting work and food, but no. In Germany and Austria, there are people starving in the streets, and the great flu epidemic has left a trail of mourning in its wake. 27 million dead. With times so hard, a grim spectre hangs over Europe, a spectre that even now tears Russia apart, the communist revolution.
I think they should get Germany back on her feet again. I'd have gone for option 3.
I'm afraid that's not what happened. The Allies chose option 1. Germany was blamed for starting the war. She had to cut down her army and navy, give up territory to her neighbors, and pay huge sums of money as reparations to the British and French. They were given a week to accept or suffer invasion. They signed.
So was the treaty a cause of the Second World War?
Yes, and that many Germans felt a lasting sense of bitterness.
Select the effects on Germany.
Germany was in turmoil. There was a political crisis, rioting in the streets, political murders. The new democratic government was blamed for losing the war and accepting the peace treaty.
Vengeance, German nation! Today, the disgraceful treaty is being signed. Do not forget it. The German people must press forward to reconquer Germany's rightful place among nations. Then will come vengeance for the shame of 1919.
These feelings of revenge and resentment were made worse by economic crisis. There was mass unemployment. The Treaty of Versailles had stripped Germany of major industrial areas, yet they were still expected to pay Britain and France £7 billion as reparations.
January 1923, Ruhr crisis. Germany has refused point blank to pay its debts. Britain says, go easy, but in France, patience has run out. They've invaded the Ruhr, the heart of Germany's coal and steel industries. Their aim, to secure payments by force. But the Germans are refusing to cooperate, downing tools and leaving the factories unmanned. Confidence is further shattered by rapid inflation.
Prices were rising so quickly they couldn't print money fast enough. A loaf of bread cost 32 billion marks.
Obviously, under such conditions, people aren't as healthy. There are increases in food poisoning, the result of eating soiled food. Also a sharp rise in infant mortality, along with increases in sicknesses among infants, rickets and digestive disorders.
Things can't go on like this.
Decision point 1923. The options. 1. Keep up the pressure. Insist on reparations in full. But would this bring Germany to collapse? 2. Relax reparations. Let Germany recover and she'd find it easier to repay her debts. 3. Let Germany off the hook. Admit the terms of the treaty were too severe and help Germany get back to normal.
Option 2, to stop things getting out of hand.
Correct. The USA loaned money to Germany to help rebuild the economy so that reparations could be paid.
So things improved?
For a while, but many Germans saw the negotiations as a climb down. Nothing short of the removal of the Treaty of Versailles would be acceptable.
But I still don't see how this caused the Second World War.
Select the rise of Hitler.
All right.
Adolf Hitler was the leader of the Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. He felt Germany had been betrayed, and to grow strong again, she had to strike out alone, independent of Allied interference.
In uns selbst allein liegt die Zukunft des deutschen Volkes. Wenn wir selbst dieses deutsche Volk emporführen durch eigene Arbeit, durch eigenen Fleiß, eigene Entschlossenheit, eigenen Trotz, eigene Beharrlichkeit, dann werden wir wieder emporsteigen, genau wie die Väter einst auch Deutschland nicht geschenkt erhielten, sondern selbst schaffen mussten.
I do not know how to describe the emotions that swept over me when he spoke of the disgrace of Germany. Through the intense will of this man, I experienced a joy that could be likened only to a religious conversion.
For those not convinced by words, there was violence and threats. Nazi bully boys roamed the streets.
We do not say an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, no. He who knocks out one of our eyes will get his head chopped off, and he who knocks out one of our teeth will get his jaw bashed in.
Why support him then?
Hitler claimed that only he could save Germany. In 1930, there was a world depression. Unemployment in Germany was rising, and for many people, the Nazis appeared to provide order within chaos. In the 1932 election, he took a third of the vote, became Chancellor in 1933, and a year later established a dictatorship. Everything in Germany was now under his control.
How did the Germans feel about that?
If you want to know more, select a German who lived at the time.
All right.
We said, well, you have to take the rough with the smooth. Dictatorship seemed to be, not that I wanted it, but it seemed to be the only way to get out of the mess. So I thought that was a good thing that they cut away all this nonsense and rather did something, really did something, and that's what Hitler did.
He eliminated the crushing unemployment that Germany suffered. And he gave millions of people new confidence and indeed welfare. They were doing better much better.
Didn't anyone try and stop him?
Nazi propaganda and terror made opposition more and more difficult. Thousands of their political opponents were arrested, and whilst many were shocked by what was going on, they accepted it because Hitler was putting Germany back to work.
So what's this got to do with the rest of Europe?
Hitler believed the Germans to be a master race whose destiny was to rule Europe, and so privately he told his generals to prepare for war. In 1935, he revealed the existence of a German air force and announced that conscription would bring the army to 5 times that permitted at Versailles.
Weren't the other countries worried about this?
What could they do? It's true that most of the great powers were members of the League of Nations, but the League had been tested and had failed. 1931, the Japanese invade mainland China, sanctions imposed and ignored. 1934, Italy under Mussolini invades Ethiopia. Again, limited sanctions, again the aggressor gets his way. By 1936, America, the Soviet Union, Britain and France were all following very different foreign policies.
Select France.
We consider Germany the greatest threat. We make pacts with Poland, with Russia, but these are empty. We would work with the British, but they pander to the Germans behind our backs. So we must put our faith in defense. Behind our Maginot Line, we'll be safe enough. Nobody wants war. With unemployment, we've got enough to sort out. Germany wants a decent-sized army. It's only reasonable. Versailles won't fair, let's face it. Should give them what they want. Anyway, it might prove useful if Stalin's Russia gets any stronger.
Give me Russia.
We must see how things turn out. We will do deals if it suits us. But the most important thing is to drag this lumbering state of ours kicking and screaming into the modern world. There's enough on our plates right now, us just coming out, depression and all. Anyhow, our families came to this country for a new life. They waved Europe bye-bye. Frankly, it's not our problem and we ain't getting involved.
Aware of these feelings, Hitler showed his contempt for the Treaty of Versailles by moving the army back into the Rhineland, an area of Germany where troops were forbidden.
March 1936. They've marched back into the demilitarized zone. The local population is naturally jubilant. In Berlin, flags were hung out in celebration of German freedom and sovereignty. Large crowds gathered outside the Chancellery during the day, and in the evening there was a torchlight procession with Herr Hitler taking the salute.
Hitler needs to be stopped before it's too late.
Decision point 1936. The options. 1. Stop Hitler by force. 2. Stop Hitler by sanctions through the League of Nations. 3. Ignore him. It was his country, and the terms of the Treaty of Versailles were too harsh anyway.
I want to choose 1, but I bet it's 3.
Yes. If option 1 had been chosen, it's likely German forces would have withdrawn. By being ignored, Hitler increasingly believed that he could do what he liked.
If only someone had done something.
That's easy to say now, knowing all the facts. But at the time, it was more difficult to spot Hitler's intentions. Select appeasement, another cause of the Second World War.
What's it mean, appeasement?
It was the British policy over the next 3 years, a belief in negotiation over war.
Eh?
The horrors of the First World War were still very much alive in people's memories. So it was becoming more and more essential to find out what the Nazis wanted, what they would accept as the price of peace, and if necessary, give it to them before they dragged the continent into another war.
So what did Hitler want?
To begin with, the unification of all German-speaking people into a greater German Reich. March 1938, he annexed Austria, the land of his birth. It was the obvious first step. There was a strong Nazi party already there, and many Austrians saw themselves as German in spirit. Western Europe began to rearm, but no action was taken against Hitler. It was hoped that Austria was all he wanted.
But it wasn't, right?
Right. Next he turned his attention to the Sudetenland, part of Czechoslovakia, but home to 3 million German-speaking Czechs. The Czech government was prepared to fight if Hitler invaded. There was a real danger of war.
Okay, what were the options?
Decision point 1938. 1. Stop him by force to preempt any further move to war. 2. Support the Czech forces if attacked. 3. Negotiate a deal. Maybe if Hitler had the Sudetenland, he'd stop there.
Okay, give me a bulletin from the Czech point of view.
1938. Czechoslovakia stands ready for war. They're a plucky nation and strong, too. Modern skills, modern arms, modern industry. An army nearly the size of Germany's and certainly better equipped. They could hold out for months. With a promise of support from the Western powers, France and Britain on their side, surely any invasion attempt would be stopped in its tracks.
Okay, it has to be option 2.
No, they chose to negotiate.
I don't believe it.
You're forgetting the hatred and fear of war. Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, flew to Germany to discuss the crisis, and on his third visit accepted that Hitler should have the Sudetenland. The Czech president had no choice but to agree.
Weren't the British ashamed?
Select a newsreel from the day.
Meanwhile, in peace, the Germans enter Sudetenland. The barrier is raised and the cars drive in. How different his entry might have been but for the efforts of Mr. Chamberlain. In peace, Hitler has achieved his objects, a peace preserved by Mr. Chamberlain's intervention.
That the settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace.
He can't be for real.
To most people at the time, Chamberlain was a hero who'd saved Britain from a war of total destruction.
But why would Hitler stop now?
That was the problem with appeasement. They wanted to believe that Hitler would stand by his word, but he always had greater ambitions. 6 months later, in March 1939, Hitler took the rest of Czechoslovakia.
Once again, the rattle of a German army on the march echoes in Europe. Where that march may end, no man can foretell, least of all the man who gave the order. But here before our eyes unfolds the drama of a nation dying. Hitler's troops enter Moravia. At Munich, the Führer gave his word that he wanted no more land in Europe. These pictures show you what his word is worth.
The fall of Czechoslovakia was something new. Hitler wasn't unifying German-speaking people. This was a hostile invasion to create living space for his German master race.
But at least they'd stop trusting him now.
But was it too late? Hitler wasn't worried by Britain and France. By now he feared only the Russians, and he drew them into his next plan of conquest, Poland. War was inevitable. So what really caused the Second World War?